The morning sun cracked over the mountain ridge like a blade of fire. Dust shimmered in the heat as the bass stirred. Metal groaned, boots shuffled, radios crackled. But inside the sniper range, time had frozen. Eliza Rae stood alone at the firing line. Her shadow stretched long across the dirt. The massive Barrett M82 rested in her arms, dwarfing her frame. Around her, soldiers leaned on sandbags, whispering, chuckling. Sergeant McElroy made a show of yawning. "She's gonna throw out her shoulder, just lifting that thing," he muttered to the corporal beside him. Colonel Hastings stood with arms crossed, unreadable. His patience had thinned. Too many reports. Too many rumors about the pixie with a scope. "This is your shot," he said. "One round. One click. One chance." Eliza didn't flinch. She adjusted her scope, steadied her breath. The wind tugged gently at her braid. Her eyes narrowed. Target set at 1,200 meters. A red balloon pinned to a steel post, almost invisible in the haze. She exhaled, soft and slow, like a whisper to a ghost. Then bang! The balloon vanished. For a full second, no one spoke. Then came the sound of disbelief. Sharp gasps, low murmurs, boots shifting in the dust. McElroy's smirk cracked. Eliza stood, ejected the shell, and walked off without a word. Later that day, they sent her out. It was supposed to be a routine Overwatch mission. A convoy bringing water and supplies to a village near the eastern ridge. McElroy didn't like it. Said it was too quiet out there. Said the maps didn't match. But Colonel Hastings waved it through. Eliza sat in the back of the Humvee, rifle across her knees, scanning the scrub and stone that stretched endlessly into the horizon. She rode with Corporal Sienna Park, sharp, easy smiling, and the only one who treated her like she belonged. "Still think they'll make you bake cookies when we get back?" Sienna asked. Eliza smiled faintly. "I'm hoping for banana bread." Sienna laughed. "I'll put in a good word." Then the world cracked open. A deafening boom. Fire and sand exploded upward. The Humvee jolted, lifted, slammed sideways. Eliza's ears rang like church bells as she crawled from the wreckage. Sienna was down, unmoving, her arm bent wrong. Smoke coiled from the twisted metal. In the distance, shouts echoed, foreign voices, sharp, fast, getting closer. Gunfire snapped overhead. She dove behind a boulder, blood running down her cheek. Her rifle gone. Footsteps pounded. They were coming. 5 men. Bandits, maybe, or worse. Dressed like farmers, but their eyes were hard. She reached for Sienna, tried to drag her back, but her leg was pinned under debris. The gunfire stopped. One of the men barked something. Another laughed. One raised his weapon at Eliza. Then came a sharp whistle. A flash of movement. A blur. The first man dropped, an arrow in his neck. The second spun and fell, blade in his spine. The others turned too slow. A man emerged from the rocks like he had grown from them, wrapped in dust-colored robes. Eyes like flint, silent. Eliza didn't breathe. He didn't look at her. Just motioned once with his hand. "Run." She pulled Sienna's arm over her shoulder and limped behind the stranger, ducking through jagged stone and sun-scorched brush. Every breath scraped her throat raw, but she didn't stop. Not until the only sound behind them was wind. They reached a crevice, hidden narrow, a dark place that swallowed the light. He led them in, knelt beside Sienna, and checked her pulse. "She alive?" Eliza whispered. The man nodded. "Who are you?" He didn't answer, just wrapped Sienna's wound and handed Eliza a flask of water. She drank, gasped. "You military?" He shook his head. Then, from beneath his robes, he pulled a carved wooden hawk. It was worn smooth, years of handling. He set it gently beside her. She frowned. "You knew my dad?" Still, he said nothing. But he looked at her, deep, like reading a language written on her skin. Rafik. She didn't know his name then, but she would. They stayed there until night. She built a fire from dry roots. He watched her with mild surprise. "My dad taught me," she said. "Texas ranch. He said if you can't make fire, you don't deserve the bullet." That night, as the moon rose, she watched Rafik, clean as knife. His movements were careful, reverent. "You saved me." He shrugged. She leaned back, eyes heavy. "Most people don't think I belong out here." He glanced at the carved hawk, then at her. Without a word, he reached into his cloak, pulled a piece of bread, and handed it over. She broke it in half, shared it. They sat in silence. Not a single word passed between them, but something did, a thread of trust. Thin, fragile, real. The next morning, Rafik scouted ahead while Eliza stayed with Sienna, whose condition had stabilized. Her radio was crushed, and the signal was dead in the rock valley. They were cut off. She waited in the shadow of boulders, gun ready, eyes darting at every movement. Rafik returned before noon, held up 2 fingers, then pointed southeast. Bandits. 2 miles out. Scouting. They'd be back. They had to move. Eliza nodded, loaded her rifle, and turned to Sienna. Time to go home. She tied Sienna into a makeshift drag sling using straps and netting. Rafik lifted the rear. Together, they started back. The desert was vast. The heat brutal. Her hands blistered. Her legs ached. But Eliza pressed forward, jaw clenched. At the halfway point, they stopped to rest. Rafik placed a cool rock in her palm. "Why?" she asked. He pointed to her pulse. "Slow it," she realized. A sniper's trick, to shoot through sweat and fear. Later, when they saw the base on the horizon, she almost wept. But they weren't alone. A flash of light glinted on the ridge. A rifle barrel. Rafik shoved her down. Bullets ripped past. Sienna cried out. Eliza crawled to her rifle case, hands shaking, dirt in her mouth. She rolled onto her stomach, heart pounding. It was him, one of the bandits. Waiting. Hunting. She looked at Rafik. He nodded once, then turned to draw fire. Eliza set her scope. Wind to the left. 5 clicks. She slowed her breath. Her finger found the trigger. Time froze again, but only for a moment. The wind kicked up red dust that stung the eyes and tasted like rust. It rolled across the base like a living thing, howling to the coils of razor wire, rattling loose tin on the barracks, and sweeping to the training yard where boots stomped and voices barked. Then everything paused. She stepped off the transport truck, like she didn't belong there. Tiny frame. Maybe 5 feet tall, if you counted the thick-soled combat boots. The desert camo swallowed her whole. Sleeves rolled twice just to see her wrists. The rifle case strapped across her back looked like it could break her spine. A few soldiers glanced up, confused. Then came the smirks. "Lost sweetheart?" a private called out. "No Girl Scouts past the wire," another added. Sergeant Ray McElroy leaned on a sandbag wall, chewing a toothpick, eyes hidden under his sweat-stained cap. He tilted his head, grinned. "Looks like the base got itself a mascot," he said. Eliza Rae didn't flinch. Her boots crunched over gravel as she headed straight for command tent, rifle case bouncing against her back. She didn't look left, didn't speak, just kept walking through the gauntlet of amusement and disbelief. Inside, Colonel Hastings glanced up from a stack of reports. His brow lifted. "You're Ray?" "Yes, sir." He looked her over like she was a riddle. "You're supposed to be 21. 19, sir. Early enlistment. Fast track from recon school." "Why?" Eliza hesitated. Her fingers twitched slightly near the strap of her rifle. "My father was here. Staff Sergeant David Rae. Killed 3 months ago in Ghazni province. I requested reassignment to his last post." The colonel exhaled through his nose. "We don't get many requests like that. I didn't come to sit behind a desk." He leaned back, appraising. "We'll see where you fit. For now, gear up. You're shadowing Sergeant McElroy." She stiffened just slightly. "Understood, sir." Outside, McElroy was already waiting, his grin wider now. "Well, hell," he said. "Didn't know I was babysitting today." Eliza said nothing. Her expression was stone. The first 2 days were silent misery. The base was a skeleton of what it had been months before. Understaffed, underequipped, and plagued by heat rumors and things that move in the hills at night. Patrols came back quieter than they left. The air was tight with waiting. McElroy treated her like a shadow, never spoke directly, called her Pixie when he thought she wasn't listening. When she was assigned to weapons maintenance, someone left a pink pacifier in her locker. She threw it in the fire pit, without blinking. Each night, she cleaned her rifle, not the standard issue, her father's, a bolt-action M40A5, customized with a weathered carbon fiber stock and a handmade leather cheek rest. She worked on it like it was alive, moving slowly, deliberately, each piece cleaned, checked, reassembled with reverence. The men watched. They didn't speak, but they noticed. On the third morning, she was sent to the range. It wasn't an official order, just a suggestion passed from the colonel to the staff sergeant to McElroy, who relayed it with a smirk. "Let's see what the mascot can do," he said, tossing her a single round. She took it in silence. The target was set at 900 meters. Wind swirled across the flats. The sun was just high enough to shimmer off the steel silhouette shaped like a man holding a rifle. Eliza lay prone, leveled the scope, adjusted the windage. McElroy leaned over her shoulder, voice thick with mockery. "Careful, that thing's not a Nerf gun." She ignored him. Her breathing slowed. Eyes sharpened. One shot. The steel rang out like a bell. McElroy's laugh caught in his throat. No one said anything, but the whisper started. That night, she walked to the edge of the compound where the land dropped off into low hills and dry gulches. She sat alone with her rifle and stared into the dark. Footsteps approached behind her. Heavy, hesitant. McElroy. He didn't sit, didn't speak. Just stood there for a long moment. "You shot clean," he said finally. She didn't look at him. "She taught me," she said softly. "My dad, when I was 10, we had coyotes tearing through our fence line back in Texas. He'd sit me on the hill and say, 'One shot, one breath, no do-overs.'" Silence stretched between them. "He was a damn fine marksman," McElroy muttered. "I know." The sergeant rubbed his jaw, then turned and walked off. The next morning, she was reassigned. Not to desk work, not to latrine duty. To a recon team headed east toward the ravine settlements, an area known for insurgent raids and bad luck. She packed light. One rifle, one sidearm, 3 clips, and a photo of her father tucked inside her vest. Corporal Sienna Park greeted her at the truck. Tall Korean-American, with a mouth full of sarcasm and sharp eyes that missed nothing. "You're Rae?" "Eliza. I heard you made the steel man sing." Eliza cracked half a smile. "He was off-key." Sienna snorted. "Good. I hate singing targets." They rolled out just after sunrise, the truck bouncing over uneven road, the horizon a blur of rock and heat. Eliza sat silent, scanning the ridgelines through her scope, fingers twitching slightly, eyes alert. She didn't speak unless asked, but inside, the rhythm of her father's voice moved with every heartbeat. Asterisk one breath, one shot, no do-overs, asterisk. And she knew the test wasn't over. It hadn't even begun. The convoy was late. Too late. Eliza knew it before the radio call started. Something was wrong. The desert had gone still. No wind, no birds, not even the buzzing of flies. Just that heavy silence, the kind that settles before something breaks. She crouched on the ridge, her scope sweeping the distant basin where the trail split in two like a broken wishbone. Rafik knelt beside her, eyes fixed on the horizon. He didn't speak, but his hand tightened on the sling of his rifle. Behind them, the sky darkened with approaching storm clouds, a bruise rolling in from the west. "Can you see them?" Eliza whispered. Rafik nodded once, then tapped his index finger against the rock 3 times. 3 vehicles. No movement. Her heart kicked faster. She adjusted the scope. The lead truck's door hung open. No sign of the driver. The second vehicle was tilted sideways, front tire blown. The third, no damage, but the windows were shattered. No bodies. No movement. She exhaled through her teeth. "It's an ambush." Rafik had already slipped backward into brush, moving low and silent. Eliza followed, rifle cradle in her arms, breath shallow. They circled down the ridge through a narrow wash, boots crunching softly over gravel. They found the first soldier 10 minutes later, slumped against a rock, shot through the chest. Private Jenkins, 19, smelled like peppermints. He'd helped her find a law suppressor 2 days ago. She forced herself to look away. The next was Sergeant Lima, face bloodied, hands tied behind his back. Eliza's stomach turned. They took prisoners. Rafik pointed to the east, where the ground sloped into a gulch filled with thorn trees and black shadow. Bandit country. They tracked the trail for half an hour, creeping between stones and sand brush. Eliza's boots left almost no imprint. Her father had taught her that, how to walk like a whisper. Near the bend, Rafik stopped, dropped to one knee, then pointed. Across the gulch, maybe 200 meters away, was a rock outcrop covered in tarps and camouflage netting. Beneath it, for men with rifles, gathered around 2 American soldiers, hands bound, faces bruised. Sienna was one of them. Her lip was split, blood drying on her chin. She knelt with her head bowed, unmoving. Eliza's chest tightened. The bandit spoke fast, agitated. One gestured wildly toward the prisoners. Another raised a rifle, barrel hovering near Sienna's face. "No!" Eliza breathed. Rafik looked at her, silent. She opened her rifle case with trembling hands. M40A5. Clean. Loaded. Scope adjusted for heat, shimmer, and distance. Rafik handed her a single round. She took it. She set her position on a flat rock shelf, prone, elbows firm in the dirt. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Wind was steady, left to right. She clicked the dial twice. The lead bandit shouted something, his voice rising. Then he stepped forward, dragging Sienna by the collar. Eliza centered her reticle on his chest. She didn't breathe. She didn't think. One shot. His chest exploded backward in a puff of red mist and torn fabric. Chaos erupted. The others scattered, diving for cover. One fired wildly into the rocks. Another grabbed the second hostage. Eliza reloaded, adjusted 2 clicks, fired again. Second target dropped, clutching his neck. Rafik had already moved, circling the gulch, knife in hand. The third bandit turned to run, but froze, weapon clattering from his hands. Rafik emerged behind him, blade glinting. Eliza stood, heart racing, smoke from the rifle curling into the air. By the time she scrambled down the slope, Sienna was coughing, trying to stand. Her face lit up when she saw her. "You're a damn ghost," Sienna croaked. Eliza helped her to her feet, untied her hands. "That's what they said about my dad." They recovered the second hostage, Private Wolf, limping in daze, and retreated to the edge of the gulch. A medevac drone arrived minutes later, summoned by Rafik's flare. The pilot's voice came over the comms, copy that. 2 wounded, 1 unconscious. Confirm shooter identity? Sienna looked at Eliza. You sure as hell better confirm her. The drone hovered as they loaded the wounded. Eliza remained on the ridge, watching it lift away. Dust churned around her boots, sunlight burning through the last of the morning clouds. She turned to Rafik. He held something in his hand, small, wooden, worn, smooth. The carved hawk. He pressed it into her palm. Her fingers curled around it. "Why me?" she asked. He pointed to her chest, right above her heart. Then he turned and walked toward the rocks, disappearing into the shimmer. Back at the base, the footage made its rounds. Drone feed, audio chatter, heat sig overlays. The brass watched it 10 times over. Colonel Hastings stood in the briefing room, arms folded, brow furrowed. "Who took the shot?" one officer asked. A younger sergeant replied, voice low. "Rae, sir." The girl. There was silence. Then Hastings exhaled, put her name on the wall. Outside, in the courtyard, soldiers gathered as Eliza stepped from a medevac truck. Her uniform was torn, her cheek still bleeding. Rifle slung across her back. They didn't laugh. They didn't speak. They just stepped aside. McElroy stood in the center, arms crossed. He gave a slow, solemn nod. No smirk. No joke. Respect. Later that night, Eliza stood alone at the edge of the base, rifle balanced on her lap, the carved hawk resting on her palm. The desert stretched before her, wide and wild. She didn't smile, didn't cry, just watched the stars rise, steady and bright. And somewhere beyond the hills, where the silence had once felt like an enemy, it now felt like a promise. The wind carried a quiet unease at night, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Eliza sat atop the observation post, legs dangling over the edge, rifle resting across her lap. Below her, the base shimmered under moonlight, tents glowing faint gold, shadows dancing along the fence line. Somewhere far off, a jackal howled. It didn't make her flinch. Behind her, the door creaked open. Sienna stepped through, limping slightly, her arm in a sling. "They've been asking about you again," Sienna said. Eliza didn't turn. "What for?" "Briefings, interviews, commendations. You're the base's favorite myth now." She chuckled softly. "Sniper ghost girl who doesn't miss." Eliza's fingers traced the carved hawk she now wore on a cord around her neck. "They didn't care when I showed up. They do now." That was the problem. Since the rescue, Eliza's name had surged through channels like a storm. She was a legend in the making, and legends, she knew, didn't live long in places like this. She didn't want to be a story. She just wanted to do her job. She stood up, slinging her rifle over her shoulder. "I'm heading to the east fence," she said. "Alone." Sienna raised an eyebrow. "Just a walk." The desert at night was colder than it looked, winds cutting to the rocks like whispers. She moved through the dark with practiced ease, boots silent, breath steady. Every ridge and crevice felt like a memory. Every step pulled her deeper into something she couldn't name. She didn't expect to see him again. But there he was, leaning against a jagged boulder, wrapped in the same faded cloak, face lit by the moon. Rafik. Eliza froze, heartbeat quickening. He didn't speak, just nodded once. She stepped forward, unsure what to say. Everything between them had been built without words. "You came back," she finally said. Rafik reached into his coat and handed her a folded piece of cloth, stained, burned at the edges. Her father's patch. The old 3rd Recon insignia. She took it, eyes stinging. "Where did you find this?" He tapped his chest, kept it, then pointed toward the mountains. There was something unfinished in his eyes, a weight that hadn't lifted. She understood. "What's out there?" she asked. Rafik crouched and drew in the sand with a stick. Lines, circles, an X over a hill. Then he tapped the sky. "Moonrise. 2 nights from now. A hidden weapons cache. Leftover insurgent supplies. Something big. Something buried with secrets meant to stay hidden." It wasn't a mission. Not officially. But it mattered. She nodded. "I'll be there." Back at the base, she filed a request for extended recon leave. Denied, so she didn't ask again. 2 nights later, she was gone before dawn. She moved through the hills like she belonged to them, Rafik beside her, silent and sure-footed. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The climb was steep, sand slipping underfoot, air thinning with each breath. At the summit, they found it, a half-collapsed cave entrance, just as he'd drawn. Inside, time had stopped. Old Soviet crates, American rifles, stolen gear, and something more, a sealed satchel marked with faded coordinates and a warning in Pashto. Rafik opened it with careful hands. Inside were maps, photographs, and a disk drive, evidence of cross-border corruption, names, numbers, and among them, a photo, her father, smiling, standing beside men she didn't recognize. Eliza stared at it, something hollow blooming in her chest. Why would he be with them? Rafik looked away. The cave shuddered suddenly. A distant crack, then the echo of gunfire. Not far. They grabbed what they could. No time to sort. A voice shouted from above. Then more. Trapped. Rafik pushed her behind a boulder. 2 armed men descended the slope, rifles raised. She fired first. 2 quick shots, clean and lethal. The 3rd man hesitated. Rafik lunged, blade flashing. Silence followed. But more were coming. They ran. Down the ridge, through the shadows, bullets kicking up sand at their heels. At the base of the canyon, Eliza stumbled, twisting her ankle. Rafik lifted her, dragging her behind a fallen log. They were pinned, trapped. Eliza pulled her rifle around. "I'll hold them off. You run." Rafik shook his head, jaw set. "They'll kill us both." Still, he didn't move. "I'm not afraid to die," she whispered. He reached out, placing a hand over her heart. "Not yet," his eyes seemed to say. Then, from the ridge above, came the distant roar of an engine. Dust exploded. A Humvee crested the hill. Sienna behind the wheel, hair whipping the wind, radio blaring. "Get in." They didn't hesitate. Tires screeched. Gunfire lit the night behind them. The Humvee tore down the slope, engine screaming. When they finally reached the base, they collapsed at the gates, panting, bloodied, alive. The satchel was locked in the command vault. The photo never left Eliza's pocket. She never spoke of it again. But some nights, she sat alone on the roof of the barracks, watching the stars. The carved hawk still hung at her chest. And though the desert had taken much, it had also returned something, truth, grit, and the quiet knowledge that even ghosts could leave a mark on the world. She never needed anyone to believe in her. She just needed to see the target and take the shot.